Thank you for coming to another Tony Montana video. A reminder to all that the Tony Montana content is exclusively for educational and historical purposes. We aim to record factual information using modern tools like the internet. Remember to subscribe to the channel to get notifications when new videos are published. The following are 2 writings about Maurice Carver. I hope you enjoy it. Maurice Carver by G.H. It is always an honor to write about someone as diverse as Maurice Carver. Much has been said about this larger-than-life Texan, and to know him was to strongly like him, or dislike him. Though I knew Maurice, I was never really close to him. By the time I met him, I had heard so much about him that I figured it was best for me to sit back and watch him carefully. I'd be at a very private get-together, miles from Texas, and he would show up in his boots, Stetson hat, and usually was dressed to kill. The crowd would gather around to hear his tall tales, and this master storyteller made most of them believable. If you listened really close, and asked the right question, he would share some real jewels of knowledge with you. I hadn't grown to trust Maurice enough to do business with him, until one of my best friends, Jay McManus, got to know him. He kept telling me about those Carver dogs, and game fowl, that he had been driving to San Antonio to see. During a short time, Jay went from being a pup, to being a pretty knowledgeable dog man. Jay was pretty much a Belizean man, who liked the Stomper Peaches stuff the best, but bred dogs a lot like Carver recommended him to do. Consequently, Jay became one of the most successful breeders, and dog men, I have had the pleasure of knowing. I've always liked the ironhead dogs, which is what my alligator dogs go back to. I always played with the idea of using some of these dogs in my breeding program. These ironhead dogs seemed to sum up any line of dogs they were crossed into, or line bred on. I asked Jay to see if Maurice would sell me some of that blood, without bogus papers. I figured that with Jay as a tie-in, Maurice would shoot straight with me. So, early one morning, Jay Hale, Jay McManus, and myself, loaded my wagon, and headed off to Hill Country, where Maurice stayed. We woke him up, but he seemed glad to see us, and he let us know that he would have been happier to see us at a later hour. He never got out of his long johns, or flip-flops that day as he toured us around that snake-infested hill. He must hold the record for the most snake-bitten dogs. I told him that a few guinea fowl would solve his problem, and he stated, "Son, I've seen those speckled boogers around game fowl, and they will peck their eyes out, so the dogs will just have to deal with the snakes." I asked, "Do you mean that a guinea fowl can whip a gamecock?" He replied, "They're dirty fighters, and usually can run a gamecock off, and can damn sure ruin one. I'm not sure if a guinea can whip one in the steel, but I'm not going keep one around, snakes or not." Maurice was a realist that could laugh about anything. While we were talking about rattlesnakes, Maurice told us a story of his brother being bitten by a snake, and dying mysteriously. He was convinced that the snake bite had something to do with his brother's death. Sure enough, a year later it was proven that snake venom is an exotic protein that can have long-term effects on the victim. We talked for hours, and finally got around to discussing what he had for sale. I stressed the importance of knowing exactly how the dog was bred, and he assured me that he'd deal straight with me. He had about a dozen for sale, and every time I'd select a pup, he'd tell me that it wasn't the pup I wanted. When it was all over, I ended up with the most ragged, brindle pup, with his help of course. He sent me home with a smile on my face, and said, "Hell son, when that bitch pup gets grown, breed her to your Rufus dog and you'll love what you get, so don't go sell them all. You never need to roll the bitch, just breed her." I called this bitch Maurice, and she showed to be extremely game. That's right, I didn't listen to him, but I did breed her on her next cycle. This was the only litter she ever had, and it contained Jay's Champion Jack, Champion Harry, Snort, Teddy Bear, and my favorite, Davis Bell. I was at a contest between the plumbers Jade and Art, when the subject of a referee came up. The Houston boys wanted Maurice, and this did not excite the locals since Maurice was really tight with Art's backers. After a lot of snorting, scratching, and head shaking, Maurice turns to me and says, "With your reputation, son, you need to rep this one, and I'll be your timekeeper, if you'll loan me your watch." Some a-hole stole my Rolex. I told him that I was betting on this one so I shouldn't call it. He rose up, with a hearty laugh, and asked, "Anyone here object to this man as the ref, and me as the timekeeper?" Everyone agreed, and it was on. After it was over, I paid my bets and headed down the road when I remembered my Timex. I turned back, and as we pulled up, I could see him grinning. "I was going to keep your watch, huh? I gave it to the plumbers for you, even though I needed one." Maurice could handle any situation with the same flair. We had met at a motel in San Antonio for a big show, and left out just before daybreak. As we went over the freeway, you could see a trail of car lights for what seemed like a mile. 2 local sheriffs pulled up to the lead car, and told Maurice he was making their jobs hard, and next time leave in smaller groups so they wouldn't be called out to investigate. They also assured him that they would be in another part of the county, and wouldn't return until they knew his show was over. We ended up in a big cockfighting arena for one of the best shows I have ever attended. As the sun came up, E. Weaver stated that it seemed as if everyone there had brought 2 cars. As usual, Maurice had everything in order and was running the show with the precision of a boxing promoter. When one show was over, another pair was set to go. Those who were there will long remember the great dogs, and good times. The best story I could remember about Maurice was when G. Gilman and Billy Don went down to get a dog from him in the 70s. Gilman said he saw mounted gamecocks in the window, a wood carving of 2 dogs in hold, and a full-length picture of a nude woman on the wall. You could see a treadmill in another room with gear mounted to the walls, and puppies were running all over, growling and shitting, while Pat mixed up some feed. Maurice stated, "Stick around, and when Pat finishes up she'll fix us some steaks." Gilman looked over the situation and said, "No thanks, we planned on eating up the road at McDonald's." It was rumored that Maurice killed a man who tried to rob him, and was not billed by the grand jury. He was considered a very powerful man in, and around the San Antonio area, for years. Maurice was, in fact, a character, but an admirable man. The things that I've written about him should give some insight as to what this legend was like. The macho image that he portrayed was not what impressed me. Maurice had a great inner strength, and was a great dog man. I can truthfully say that he was one of the greatest breeders ever, and did a great deal for the breed, and the game. There's much more to this man that can ever be written, and I only said a small part of it. There are others who knew him better, and I wish that they were compelled to write a story, or 2, about this great man. Maurice Carver, what a guy. Maurice Carver by J. McManus. My first contact with Carver was when most of the dogs on my yard was heavy in the blood of Long's Tuffy. I was told that Maurice had some of this blood, and a friend of mine would call and arrange a trip to visit Maurice's place in San Antonio. It was about 5 a.m. when I arrived, and it seemed as if no one was home. After about an hour, a man with a long gray mustache, and pajamas, came out and asked me what I needed. I told him that I had come to breed my female to one of his dogs that had a lot of Tuffy, or Belizean blood. I also explained that I had driven from Fort Worth, and that my friend had called to let him know that I was coming. He explained to me that he had not received any such call, and he was not breeding his dog. I was upset, but I asked if I could rest for a while, before heading home, and he snapped, "Yes, but don't wander around by the dogs." After this disappointment, sleep was impossible, so I decided to play my fiddle. A bellow came out of the house saying, "Come here." I thought to myself, oh, I've went and woke the man up again. He asked me to come inside, and play some more, and we talked about me, and my dogs. He agreed to let me breed for half the litter. He later told me that he liked my playing so well, that he let me breed the female. He was probably thinking that I'd never make it in the music industry, so maybe he should help me out. After this, I made several trips to see Maurice, and always felt welcomed. Every time anyone left Carver's place, he'd say, "Y'all stick around, the dancing girls will be here in a little while." Once Maurice brought a puppy in the house, and told me that when some buyers came to his house, later that day, to buy a pup, this would be the puppy they would get. They arrived, and as soon as they saw the pup they asked what it was. Maurice explained that it was not for sale. After a few hours, they had talked him into selling the pup for double the price. What a salesman! I never regretted the many trips I made to Maurice's, because I learned a lot, and saw some really good dogs. Maurice was not the only man to help me out, but he was the most entertaining. If you liked the video, give it a like, since that is the only way I know you want more. It also helps get the video seen by others that do not know about my channel. This is Tony Montana, until next time.